On this edition of the Ness and Celtics podcast, we recap Boston's overtime loss to the Clippers, the current state of the Celtics depth chart, and the NBA's city uniforms release. Welcome back to the Ness and Celtics podcast. I'm Chris Grunham, joined as always by Adam London. Adam, we'll jump right into it. The Clippers beat the Celtics last night 107-104. It's the best game of the year in my opinion. Down the stretch it was. The first half was not pretty by any means. It was the Celtics. They tied their lowest scoring first half point total. They also had a season high in turnovers overall. It was a rock fight, something that Marcus Smart thrives in. What were your thoughts? I mean, overall, it's a loss, but it was positive takeaways on my part.
Right. Obviously, in the NBA, there's no moral victories. But as a Celtics fan, you have to come away from that game encouraged, to say the least.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of the first games this season where you had Paul George and Kawhi playing together. You took probably the deepest team in the league to the brink in their home court. I mean, the type of stuff you want to see from the Celtics.
Yeah, and so let's start with the positives there, because there was a lot shoved into this one game.
Sure.
Realistically, we could have a couple episodes just picking apart this game. So we'll start with positives. One, like you said, they took the Clippers to overtime. If I told you at the beginning of the year that Gordon Hayward was going to get hurt, that Kemba Walker was going to go 4 for 17, Jaylen Brown was going to go 3 for 14, they were going to be without Gordon, and they were still going to push the Clippers to overtime, have a chance with the final couple possessions and lose by 3, that's a bright spot. Like, as much as Celtics fans probably want to say, well, you know, Kemba's had a couple rough shooting nights here and Jaylen Brown needs to be more consistent or whatever, you have to take the overall positive, and granted, it's kind of like a big bird's eye view, which I get people don't like to do, and it's still early in the year, but this, in my opinion, it kind of solidified. Again, it's early. We talked about this before we started recording. It's still November. But this game kind of solidified to me something I didn't believe before the season started, that the Celtics belong at the top tier of the NBA. I did not think they even belonged at the top tier of the Eastern Conference, really, outside that. I thought they were outside that top 2 coming into the year. But I think they belong. I think this kind of confirmed it.
Right, and as far as positive takeaways are concerned, I felt with last year's team, their struggles were pretty, contagious.
Yeah.
When some guy started going on, getting cold, another would, and it just kind of rubbed off on the whole team.
Yeah.
I think for the Celtics, it was pretty encouraging. Obviously, Kemba had a rough night. Jaylen, not his best night. To see Tatum kind of put the team on his back when no one really had it going offensively, being like, all right, I'm going to take us there. I mean, that was, I think, a huge step for a guy like him.
That was huge. He looked like an all-star at points last night. I think it was Adam Himmelsbach who tweeted that. Someone did in the middle of the game, but he really did. He was 12 of 24. He played 41 minutes. I don't know if that's his career high. I know the Celtics have played a couple long OT games that he's been involved in, so I'm not sure if that's his career high, but 30 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. So he filled the stat sheet. If we're going to switch to a negative real quick, he took 1 shot in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Down the stretch, if he's your guy, clearly it's not Kemba's night. And if you're going to have this widespread offensive production with or without Gordon Hayward, it doesn't really matter. You're going to look at Tatum, Kemba, and Jaylen Brown to provide that scoring punch. Like last night, there are going to be nights when guys aren't firing on all cylinders. There might be that one guy. That was him last night. I don't know if that falls on Stevens. I don't know if that falls on Tatum to be more assertive. Granted, he didn't play the entirety of the fourth quarter. He was on the bench for the majority of the beginning, but you got to get him more looks.
And you have to wonder almost if that's a lingering effect from last season.
Yeah.
Where regardless of how the game was playing out, that team knew, like, all right, we're going to end up giving the going Kyrie's way these last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think this year going in, everyone knew it was kind of going to be a well-balanced attack. You had your 4 or 5 guys, but for the most part, it was going to be, everyone chips in.
Yeah.
So you have to wonder if that's in the back of Tatum's mind, like, I know I'm heating up right now, but I don't want to step on the game's toes. But in a game like that, like you said, you kind of have to.
Yeah,
you're the only one going.
Totally. And I think that'll come with time. Granted, they've only played 14 games with this group. Coming in, Kemba was the guy.
Right.
He was going to be their offensive punch at the top. Granted, Tatum was always going to be one of the top scorers on this team, but it's not crazy or out of the realm of possibilities that he's like, all right, we're coming down to the stretch here. No matter what's happening, I have to look at Kemba. He's the vet. He's our guy. I got to look at him. So I think with time, he'll realize that, all right, tonight's my night. Maybe there'll be a night where he's 4 of 17. Kemba's got 31 points, and you turn to him. Much of that winning streak was Kemba's unbelievable fourth quarters, and they did a good job of getting him the ball down some of those stretches. Another positive I took, which I was seeing a lot on Twitter last night after the game, there was a lot of people picking on Daniel Theis. Theis was pretty good, in my opinion. He was 4 of 8 in 31 minutes, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, and 8 points. Yes, he was murdered in cold blood by Kawhi. We'll get to that. But for the most part, I think he primarily was defending Zubac and Montrezl Harrell. I mean, Montrezl Harrell is a really, really good big man. He was 3 of 8, 6 points, 6 rebounds. Not a ton going on. A lot of that was thanks to Theis. People were picking on missed assignments and whatever. I think this was another good example of what he can provide against a bigger, stronger lineup.
Right. Going into that game, my first thought, I think, was they are going to be absolutely terrorized down low.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought Zubac and Harrell both were going to have, season-high nights. Going in, a combined 13 rebounds from Harrell and Zubac, you'll take that every time.
100%.
I mean,
100%.
Granted, Beverley came out of nowhere with 16. You don't like that, especially when you have good wing defense.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think a lot of it with Theis is you kind of just have to accept who he is.
Yeah.
He's not going to be the complete big that, there's so few of those in the league to begin with.
Right.
If you take Theis for what he is, last night was a perfectly fine night for him.
Yeah, and I think the Celtics have done, they're fine with that at the moment. Of course, there's a lot of those people out there that want the Celtics to go make a trade. But the guy they want the Celtics to make a trade for, like you said, they're few and far between at this point in the NBA. And realistically, they only serve a purpose against a select few teams. Granted, one of those teams is probably the Philadelphia 76ers. And there are teams that the Celtics are going to need to beat that they would have a much easier time doing so with a bigger, more fundamentally sound, true big man than Enes Kanter. But I don't think they're in need of a trade at the moment.
Plus, and you mentioned the trade thing is if you look at the Celtics roster and how some of those salaries and contracts are laid out.
Yeah.
2 of the guys you'd kind of only be able to make a trade for are you'd have to include a Kanter or a Theis with that kind of money. So then it's kind of being counterintuitive. Yeah. And also how big of trade chips are those guys to begin with?
Also, you know what I mean? do you want to a lot of Celtics fans are wanting them to push for a trade right now. They're 11-3.
Yeah.
Just pump the brakes. We're in November.
Right.
They're 11-3. Things could be much, much worse.
No, it's kind of funny how quickly it's almost like a snap of the finger of Celtics fans. It was start of the season. It's all right, if we can get this 4th seed, maybe that'd be great. And then they get off this 11-3 start. You're we got to make a trade now to be the number 1 seed for sure.
We're making a finals run.
It's a long season. Yeah. Let's see how this thing plays out.
It's a dramatic twist, at the snap of. I thought it was going to be extremely dramatic because, in my opinion, when they lost in Sacramento, we'll recap briefly the rest of the road trip later on in the episode. But when they lost in Sacramento, they snuck by the Warriors.
Yep.
They lost in Sacramento. They were kind of tempting fate leading up to that Sacramento game, so it was only a matter of time. I thought for sure they were going to lose in Phoenix.
Oh, yeah.
And then I thought for sure they were going to lose the Clippers. So in my opinion, I pictured them beating the Warriors, and then once they lost that Sacramento game, I pictured them closing out this road trip with 4 straight losses. Yeah. I'm assuming they would go on to lose to Denver tomorrow night. Granted, who knows? They're playing well above what I thought they would be right now, so they could easily win that game. That Phoenix win was huge to kind of put a halt on that panic. Another panic, not necessarily panic, I shouldn't use that word. Another negative about this team that a lot of people are nitpicking is if Kemba can kind of be the guy, specifically down the stretch. And I know Brad Stevens said this last night where they were talking about the last play when Kemba kind of got buried in the corner. Kawhi blocked the shot at the buzzer, and people were saying, maybe look to Tatum there, which is fine. I'm fine with that. Or Kemba needs to go at a different look. He got the look in the corner, whatever. He's being defended by Kawhi.
Yeah.
He's small.
Yeah.
You knew that when Kemba got here. He's small. So I don't think that you should jump to the conclusion of Kemba can't be the guy on a championship team. I think time will tell. We're 14 games in here. But I do think it is interesting to see the difference between him down the stretch as opposed to Kyrie down the stretch. Yeah. And I don't like making these Kyrie comparisons over and over again. But it's noticeable, right?
Yeah, and just expanding on that Stevens quote, he was like, it was a good inbound pass.
Yeah.
Created enough space.
Yeah.
Good look. It's Kawhi.
Yeah.
Like he was saying, there's a handful of guys in the league who are going to block that shot. Granted, we don't know if it's going to go in, if he gets it off, whatever. Yeah. But he was saying, it's just, it's Kawhi. So sometimes in sports, sometimes you just have to tip your cap. As New Englanders, we've seen it time and time again. It's like Brady's handed this cards that looks like there's no way he's going to be able to come out of it, and somehow he does. It's like, all right, we're tipping our cap. That's how it was.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to. I feel like, can Kemba be the guy? At this point, I don't think. How can you say no definitively? Right. Obviously, I think either you could. If you're going to say it one way or the other definitively, it would have to be yes. You look like what he did with the Charlotte team, and now he's around guys who can complement him.
Yeah.
So, it's weird seeing Celtics fans questioning him in that regard, like this early in the season.
It's almost just kind of the name of the game at this point, which is fine. It's interesting to see that kind of nitpicking with an offense that's really this widespread, and it's going to be a different guy every night, which is great. Yeah. But it might be difficult when you're coming down to the wire in a close game, because it's like, all right, well, we've been this widespread. We have 5 guys right now in double figures. Who the hell do we turn to? But you're just going to have to ride with who's getting you there that night, which is why I would have liked Tatum to get more looks in that fourth quarter.
Right, and obviously you would like for it to become somewhat of a champagne problem. You know what I mean? Because we've already seen it.
I think it already is.
Right, and I think we've seen it already. Tatum is growing this killer in him almost game in and game out. We saw it with the game winner against the Knicks. Yeah. Last night in Staples, needing a 3, half a minute left, and just sticking it. It's a grown man shot.
Yeah, he put Paul George on skates. And at first, when I watched it live, I thought there was a push-off. He legitimately messed up Paul George's ankles. Yeah. And I'm not a Celtics fan, and that play got me up. I loved seeing that, but you have to love seeing that kind of almost dog in him.
Right.
But he needs to maybe eventually take that next step where he's assertive in getting the ball down the stretch in that fourth quarter. Speaking of dogs and dog mentality, guys who thrive in rock fights, Pat Bev, Marcus Smart last night. Pat Beverley was the difference down the stretch for the Clippers. I think there's no question about that. 41 minutes. He had 14 points, 7 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, and 16 rebounds. He was shooting below 20% coming into this game. He was 5 of 11. He's a guy similar to Marcus Smart, realistically similar to what this entire Celtics team, other than maybe Kemba Walker, should be. It's a guy who lets that defense dictate his offense. And so when he starts getting stops on the other end, he thrives on offense. Yeah. And that's the way he should, because he thrives off his defense. And Marcus Smart made some incredible plays last night too. The diving play in particular, when he dove and tossed the ball off Kawhi Leonard's ankle to get the Celtics the ball back with under 20 seconds left. But Pat Beverley wanted nothing to do with comparisons to Marcus Smart after the game. John Krause from Mass Live asked him, hey, you've got a guy matching your intensity out there in Marcus Smart that you don't often come across. What's that like? And he just kind of laughed. He was like, yeah, that's funny. And just didn't say anything else.
Yeah, I just thought, listen, I get these guys are, as professional athletes, you're always going to be prideful and whatnot. But the way he acted was if it was like an incredibly insulting comparison.
Like demeaning, yeah.
I'm like, why are you so upset about being, it wasn't even a direct comparison. It was just kind of just being lumped in the same company with a guy who was first team all defense last year. And is a leading candidate for Defensive Player of the Year right now.
Yeah, I think you could have said anyone.
Right.
And you could have said Scottie Pippen.
Could have said Michael Jordan.
Yeah, you could have said Michael Jordan, and he would have been like, that's funny. That got Pat Bev.
And it was funny, the opposite end of the spectrum, Smart couldn't have offered higher praise.
No,
he was saying this guy's a game changer, this and that. And
completely.
You think just as a competitor, you'd be like, return the favor or something.
I think that's just part of Pat Bev's like Chicago mentality, where he really, really does not care to praise anyone else. Which, to a point, I respect. To a point, it's like, all right, at some point you gotta like give up some sort of praise.
It gets to a point where it's almost gimmicky.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen a lot of like hard-nosed guys. When push comes to shove, be like, all right, like
tip your cap.
Tip your cap. You know, great effort, whatnot. This guy,
and I think that's far more common.
Right. Yeah. I mean, these guys should get it. I mean,
right.
You know, they've been doing this a long time, and for him just to totally scoff at it, I thought was strange.
Part of me thinks it's him wanting to, like you said, it's almost gimmicky where like he's saying this and he wants to go home and see it on his phone immediately, see it on Slam, see it on like Twitter. Right. He wants it to like build up like that, which is annoying.
What I kind of liken it to was when Kyrie, and obviously he still does, is when he's in his post-game press conferences and he's giving these, long-winded, insightful answers for like questions that require very short, quick answers.
Yeah, he goes philosophical.
Right, and it's the same idea with Pat Bev with like this like dogging him. Like, we get it, dude. Like, no one's questioning.
No one is questioning your
guy.
defensive ability, your intensity.
We get it. Like, you're one of like
probably one of
the top guys that nobody wants to go up against.
Yeah.
We get it.
Yeah.
You don't have to sell yourself anymore.
Yeah, we understand.
It's fine if you give someone even just a minor compliment.
No one is gonna knock anything from your intensity if you give Marcus Smart one compliment,
right?
Which is fine. Real quick, we do have to. We mentioned it before. Daniel Theis, I guess, has taken on the Aaron Baines role of getting viciously dunked on.
Yeah,
like that was maybe one of the best posters I've seen this season in quite a long time, actually. I kind of felt bad for Daniel Theis because he's not someone who often finds himself in that position.
I don't think anyone benefited from that poster more than Kemba.
Yeah.
Because Kemba, I mean, it felt like 10 shots he took last night got blocked, and no one's going to remember now.
No one's going to remember,
because Kawhi swatted Theis to Mars.
Yeah, seriously.
So, I mean, Theis, and I mean, he took it. I mean, it happens, but again, it's just it reverts back to tipping your cap to Kawhi. He's just going to do Kawhi things.
He's just going to do Kawhi things, yeah. I'm trying to think of any other takeaways I had. The Celtics' first quarter struggles continued again. Granted, a lot of that was because of the Clippers' perimeter defense. They're one of the best defending teams in the NBA. But over the last 3 or 4 games, the Celtics have shot under 39%, I think. In 4 straight first quarters. Prior to that, they were shooting well over 45% for like 5 in a row, I believe. It's kind of a weird inconsistency. I don't really know if that's part of, they're on a long road trip. Yeah. Like, they're gassed. I don't know.
And save for the Milwaukee game, which they eventually ended up winning.
Right.
It seems like in games where they've started off slow, they've managed to suck down the opponent to struggle too. So,
which is fine.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want to get in a rock fight, we'll get in this rock fight.
Exactly,
I mean, we've seen this team is built for that. So I'm not obviously recommending that they continue to struggle early.
Yeah.
But if they can bring down teams with them when they're in these, kind of scraping their way out, you can do a lot worse than that.
That's totally true. I mean, their 2 lowest first half point totals were 42 points. One against the Bucks, one against the Clippers. The Bucks, obviously, they scored 74 points in the second half and beat the Bucks. Clippers last night didn't go their way, but they pushed them into overtime. Like, they've dragged their opponents in. They didn't necessarily drag the Bucks in during that first half, but they were able to crawl back in. So, like you said, I wouldn't really advise for a 42-point first half, but whatever, that's fine. So, rest of the road trip. So, it started in Golden State. They tempted fate big time there with a really bad Warriors team. Won 105-100. They went to Sacramento, afternoon game, who they actually didn't start off horribly in that game, which was odd because it was a Sunday afternoon. But they ended up losing because Buddy Hield went on an absolute tear. So that was, that was an issue last year with one guard hurting the Celtics backcourt. Hasn't been as much this year. We'll see if that goes forward. Then the Suns game, they benefited from Ricky Rubio not playing. I thought that was a huge win because you could easily get sucked into the middle of a West Coast road trip, like kind of an exhausting loss against the Kings, and your big game against the Clippers is next. So you kind of just look past it like, whatever, we'll just get through the Suns game. I thought that was a pretty solid win that's probably going to get overlooked.
Right. Well, first, I thought it was kind of ironic the way they lost to the Kings, just because they caught many breaks over that winning streak. So, it's kind of poetic that the streak came to an end just by like an excruciatingly unlucky break.
Just sitting on top of the rim.
I mean, it sat there. I mean, it was.
It was the Tiger Woods. It was the Tiger Woods swoosh putt. If it didn't go in,
right,
it just sat and went the other way.
You mentioned that. I agree with you entirely about the Suns game. I think it's not just that not that they won; it's how they won.
Yeah.
I mean, to limit, you're not going to see many games this season. The Suns only score 85 points.
Yeah, no, trust me. That's my team.
Right. We've talked about the Suns ad nauseum on this program.
They're a high flying offense. Ricky Rubio kind of runs that offense. Though, like if they don't have a guy to turn to, when it quickly becomes Javon Carter, who is similar to Pat Bev, he is a defensive menace.
Right.
But Jesus Christ, he is so bad on offense. Like, it's not pretty.
And one thing I was encouraged by that game is it seems like in other games the Celtics have won, they've opened this lead and they kind of let them come back where it's a little too close for comfort. This one, they kind of left that 12 to 15 point margin open the entire night, and that's tough to do against a Suns team that can catch heat.
No, totally.
Pretty quickly.
Best team in the NBA, the Phoenix Suns. It's tough to do against them. Yeah. Also, they kept Devin Booker to under 50 points, which is rare against the Celtics. So big time plus there. Before we jump to stuff around the league, I do want to talk about Enes Kanter.
Yeah.
Specifically in that Suns game, he didn't play in the second half. He played 5 minutes total, and I get that we're at a point still in the season where Brad Stevens he's toying with that depth because without Gordon Hayward, it becomes a little bit tougher with that bench rotation. At times, you've seen Javonte Green get first quarter minutes, and Grant Williams doesn't play. And then you see the DNP go to Javonte Green, and Grant Williams gets the minutes. Such was the case against Phoenix. But it's kind of put Enes Kanter in an interesting spot. 5 minutes against Phoenix, 12 against the Clippers. He was actually pretty good against the Clippers. He corralled a couple offensive boards early, 6 rebounds total in 12 minutes. But what's his role going to be going forward, do you think? Granted, it's going to be ever-changing, and I'm sure he'll find a sporadic start against a bigger team. But what do you see his role going forward? Because I don't really know where he fits in right now, if he does at all.
Yeah, I get that he's been limited to only 7 games. He had the injury stuff.
Right.
But we knew Kanter's limitations coming in. We knew that he was, let's call it what it is. He's a liability on defense.
Yeah.
But we knew we'll take the good with the bad, which is, he'll give you a 10 and 10.
Right.
He'll be a beast on the offensive glass.
Which is what they need.
Right. And he's shown next to nothing.
Yeah.
His best game so far has been a 13-9, 25 minutes against the Wizards.
Yeah, right.
And that was a game you put up 140 points.
Yeah.
So I don't want.
That's his wheelhouse.
Right. And you should.
We could play, if the Celtics could play the Wizards every night, Kanter would be
right.
Awesome.
And you don't want to put grain of salt on like a solid performance, but kind of feels like you have to for that one. How much stock can you put in a game against the Wizards?
You can't, unfortunately.
I get that, again, his sample size is limited, but I feel like 7 games is enough for at least once or twice to post just, a standard Enes Kanter game.
Right. Like, he was fine against the Kings, too. He had 10 and 7. But, it wasn't like – it's kind of like, Right. There's nothing really to it. And you see – Stevens including him in this bench depth rotation, which can't be promising if you're Enes Kanter. And who knows? Granted, it's probably going to change matchup by matchup, and things will change with the starting lineup. Like, there are certain games where you're not going to be able to turn to Kemba Walker as much because you're playing a bigger lineup, whereas you're going to have to look at guys like when Gordon Hayward comes back or Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. It's matchup based, so I get that, but part of me is really, if I'm Enes Kanter, I'm a bit concerned about my role because if you're not providing that punch in the offensive end, you're suddenly equal with Grant Williams there, who has been really, really good defensively, like almost shockingly good defensively for a rookie.
Yeah.
Still has shown 0 perimeter game, which doesn't really help. But Grant Williams has been really good and almost like out-battling him for minutes.
And you have to wonder how, or if at all, last season will affect Stevens' decision-making this year.
Yeah.
Granted, last year was a borderline anomaly with the amount of, high-end depth they had.
Yeah.
He literally spent the entire season toying. I
Yeah.
mean, he tinkered with that rotation
All
from
year.
start to finish.
Yeah.
And obviously did not end up paying dividends because they just never formed an identity.
Right.
But there were sprinkles throughout last season where you could tell, like, this is clearly their best, 5, their best 8.
Totally.
And I think this year, we're in the stage now where it's the time to, figure these things out. But you have to wonder, it's like, all right, when's the cutoff when I'm like, this is
This
our
is what
best.
we're rolling with. Yeah.
I'm not going to try to mess with this anymore.
Yeah.
Kanter is what he is,
Right.
and this is what we're going to roll with.
I think that's going to be in part. It's happening in part more so because of Hayward's injury, and that's going to become more solidified once he returns and a couple weeks after his return. But if Brad Stevens has a choice to who he's going to cement in his rotation in one way, shape, or form, it's Brad Wanamaker. Like, every single game, if he's not asked a question about Brad Wanamaker, he's going to find a way to talk about him. Like, and he has been very good. He took on this Plumber Brad persona with Celtics Twitter, almost where like, get him out of here because we want Carson. Brad Wanamaker has been so good, and he's played now 20-plus minutes in 3 straight games. He played 27 minutes against the Clippers. He had 14 points. He was their second leading scorer for the majority of regulation. Like, solid is the only way I can really describe what he's been.
Right, especially in the NBA, especially when you're dealing with so many young players.
Yeah.
It's tough to find or have players in your rotation, younger guys, where it's like you know exactly what you're going to get with for them. Like, yeah, obviously it'd be great to see Carson go in there and just go bonkers.
This is not going to happen.
But when you put Carson Edwards in there as a rookie, you don't know what you're going to get.
Exactly.
I mean, he could go ice cold. With Wanamaker, at a bare minimum, you know he's going to do his job.
Right.
He's not going to play outside of his game, and he'll pitch in, whatever it is, between 6 to 13 points.
Yeah, totally.
And just filling in those cracks between your top guys. I mean,
yeah, and
that's for a Celtics team that we were legitimately worried about their depth. To see how Wanamaker is playing right now is encouraging.
Right, because that concern shot through the roof when Gordon Hayward got hurt, and so, and what we were saying about Carson Edwards and even Grant Williams to a point is not a knock on them whatsoever. They've played 9 to 10 games. Like, they've had a couple DNPs, and that's just they're rookies. That's fine. So you can't rely on them. But Wanamaker has been extremely, extremely reliable. Before we wrap up, we haven't recorded. We missed last week just because of scheduling stuff. So we kind of missed the load management debate. It was hot in the streets, to put it lightly. So we do kind of have to touch on it to a point. I mean, they're coming off a game against the Clippers when Kawhi came back. Where do you fall in this whole debate?
Sure. I see the side of people who are against it. People bring up the whole argument of, ticket holders. It's like, I paid X amount of money to see Kawhi play in this, primetime game against this high-end team. And I get that. But at the same time, it's like, these are, especially in the NBA, I feel like a lot more than other sports, is we judge these guys entirely off of championships and success.
Yeah.
It's proven that this strategy works.
It worked for Kawhi last year.
Literally last year. So the fact that people are up in arms about this, I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's easy to get caught up in the moment. Are you really going to be that upset that Kawhi missed a mid-November game?
Yeah.
I mean, when he's tearing it up in the Western Conference Finals,
and you're
probably
glued,
NBA
and you're
Finals,
glued to your TV.
right?
Yeah.
Are you going to remember that he missed that game against the Lakers?
No, not at all.
Right.
And like you said, I think it's key to point out what you started with. I do have sympathy for the fans, because there are families that go to these games and they get little Johnny coming to his first Clippers game and Kawhi's not there and he's upset. That sucks.
Yeah.
Like, plain and simple. I get it. That sucks. But I mean, if you're the Clippers or Kawhi or whatever, it's a no-brainer. Like,
also, you can only really have so much sympathy, though, for the ticket holder, because say you pay the same amount of money for a ticket Kawhi's playing in a game, everything's coming, and then both teams suck. It's an awful game.
Totally.
And you take
You're
your
always
chances.
you're always
You
taking
get
that chance.
no guarantees when you buy a ticket.
You are always
So,
taking that chance,
yeah.
and that's completely fair. Like, I get it. And to the people who are yelling, well, Larry Bird, this, Kevin McHale, that, I don't really think that goes anywhere because those guys can barely move now.
Right.
And if you're Kawhi or someone else who's operating on a load management schedule, and you're looking at a 62-year-old Larry Bird it takes him 3 minutes to get up out of a chair, you're like, no, I'm cool with that. Like, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
I'm going to manage myself a little bit better.
It's to each their own as far as how you view this line of thinking, but modern day athletes seem to have, a much greater understanding of the bigger picture.
100%.
I think a lot of them, obviously, this isn't to question any of their passions or love for the games, but like, for some of them, like, we know this is our job now.
Yeah.
And it's going to be over in 5 to 10 years, however time. And then they're already planning their post-career stuff. And it's like you said, I want to be able to walk when I'm done with this
exactly.
thing.
Larry Bird's career ended early because of his back, and he blames it on playing too much. He blames it on beating the hell out of himself.
And plus, just as like, it's always sucks when you see a guy who legitimately plays until the wheels fall off.
Yeah.
That last season when you're like, all right, you just gotta go.
Yeah.
It's like what? Not to be morbid, but it's like it's kind of like just like a really old dog is going down.
Yeah.
It's like this is because you remember like how great they were in their prime.
Yeah.
And then it's just like
when used to
No.
Yeah.
So I mean, long story short, could the load management be diminished? Like, could Kawhi play 65 games instead of 60?
Totally.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if we're asking him to play 75 games, I think. I mean, also we're forgetting Kawhi has a legitimate chronic knee problem.
That's what kept him out of so
never
many
gonna go
games
away.
in San Antonio. Like that's never going to go away. And if you're the Raptors, like they did, or you're now the Clippers, and you're looking at the way San Antonio handled his knee problems and how that turned out, and the way Toronto did, you're like, yeah, we're going to do what Toronto did. That worked out pretty well for them. I like the way Doc Rivers handled it too. He's like, yeah, we'll eat the fine, whatever, that's fine. Like
bigger picture.
Bigger picture, that's okay. Real quick, also, city uniforms for the Celtics are out. We talked about the disgusting photo from Enes Kanter's iPod Touch that clearly had color distortion. The uniforms, in my opinion, are fine. They're not great. They're not bad. Like, whatever. I thought the ad campaign, we talked about this before, was a little bizarre. Just like tweeting out pictures of blue collar, I don't know, like Boston sand and gravel workers. I thought that was
interesting to say the least.
Kind of weird, But I mean, the uniforms are what they are. They're fine. I think they're better than the old gray ones that they used to wear. Those were atrocious.
Yeah, and I think they also do benefit tremendously from the fact that there are just a handful of downright
there are some
putrid.
Really bad
I
ones.
mean, I think objectively the worst one has to be the Mavericks.
I was hoping you'd say that. The graffiti type thing, whatever it's supposed to be.
It looks like they made it from spray paint.
Yeah, I think that's what they wanted it to look like for some reason.
And then
it's really bad.
This pains me to say because I'm already dealing with enough with my beloved Bulls, but they're going with this like light blue.
Yeah,
red
they're
combo.
trying to grab it. It's not great.
I just imagine just like Scottie Pippen and MJ looking at that, being like, "Oh, what the hell are these? Like, we cannot roll with these."
It's really, it's not great when you trot out Chris Dunn and Zach LaVine in those uniforms. And also, I love the color, but you could have gone with something better than Cream City. I get that it's Milwaukee. I get that. I get it.
When you do,
you're gonna take some heat.
When you're doing that, you're pretty much just screaming from the mountaintops, please ruthlessly make fun of us on the internet.
Exactly, yeah. And someone in their PR department realized that at the time, and they tried to speak up, and right now they're like, see, I told you so. In terms of the best, the Memphis Grizzlies, bringing back the Vancouver Grizzlies.
Fantastic.
By a mile. Those were phenomenal.
And you like to see it from already good teams, very strong from the Nuggets.
Very strong.
You got the black.
They've got a really good thing.
You got the Rainbow Mountains.
They just like lightly tweak it every single year. Very good. The Sixers lightly tweaked theirs from last year. Also very good.
I imagine the Hawks that just say Peachtree across will be a very popular like Coachella.
For sure. You're going to see those all over Instagram.
Music festival vibe. Yeah, I mean.
Big time Trae Young, city jersey thing. Yeah. But without question, I mean, the Mavericks, I don't know what
and I mean, it was just weird for them also to go with Porzingis instead
Yeah,
of Luka. I mean, I know the Mavs are kind of, they don't have a huge pool to choose from as far as, cool guys to, present with them. But, I mean, Porzingis is just like, I don't know.
Just kind of.
It was just weird.
Just kind of. Also, I mean, I'm assuming they took these photos before the season started, and maybe that's why. But we don't really have time to go through NBA notes. But Luka is remarkable to watch. Like, he's insane.
I think we're going to have to check that birth certificate, I think. I mean, there's no way he's 20, right?
He is insane. Yeah. Watching the game prior to Celtics-Clippers last night, he probably could have had a triple-double in the first half. He had 34, a triple-double after 3 quarters. He didn't play at all in the fourth quarter because they had 900 points on the JV Warriors, who had 8 players. I felt terrible for him. He's really turning into a machine.
And what I love about Luka too is he knows how good he is.
Oh yeah.
Like you'll see highlights. He'll just pull up from 35, awesome. Bury it, and you can see that he's been like shooting it with someone on the sidelines. They'll give him a look. He's like, oh yeah, no, I'm that good. Like, I can hit that regularly.
Yeah, it's awesome, and I love it. I absolutely love it. And he is one person that is making people eat crow on Twitter who were against him in pre-draft rankings, whatever. It takes a lot for people to go back on their pre-draft stances.
Yep.
He makes people do that because he's that good. So we're going to get together again early next week because Thanksgiving is on Thursday, so that'll kind of throw a wrench into our schedule. So likely Tuesday, I think, we'll release the next one, which will come on the heels of another game against the Kings. Oddly enough, the Celtics always play the Kings, both those games within the same week every year. Really bizarre. So they finish up the West Coast road trip Friday night in Denver. That's a 9 o'clock tip. Then they come back. They have the weekend off, and Monday night the Kings come to TD Garden, and we will discuss those 2 games and any more putrid city uniforms that get released on Tuesday. So we will talk to you then.